Jaisy will be bringing us through. Okay, so today Jaisy will be bringing us through the topic of semiotics and its application in brand positioning, strategy, design, and communication development. So, just to share a very quick background about our speaker today, Jaisy. Jaisy has over 20 years of experience in qualitative research. She has worked in all of she has worked in leading agencies in India, as well as she's an entrepreneur on her own. She worked with Ipsos as a qualitative head and Ipsos as well as TNS Singapore as the regional lead for Unilever. So um, she has also completed both her masters in marketing management and psychology, and her long-standing career includes research in various categories such as food, automobile, um, personal care, cigarettes, technology, and she's currently doing UX and UI research as well. So Jaisy has also conducted training modules for NTU Singapore, and she has also done training modules for FMCG and auto companies, as well as presented research papers too. Her expertise is mainly in consumer behavior and its motivations, brand planning strategy, as well as using visual tools to identify deeper meanings associated with brands. Um, and in line with that, there will be semiotics and cultural understanding. And she has conducted training programs in qualitative research too. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this session with Jaisy. Jaisy, please.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Eunice. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And so today we're going to speak about semiotics, which is in its purest form a very complicated subject. So there are very few practitioners globally also, sort of very few theorists. Practitioners, there are a lot of us who have kind of used it in along with qualitative research. And so there are quite a few in UK, China, India. So we're all, trying to learn and practice it. So we are not really semioticians, but we've tried to use it in research to understand consumers and their context, which is culture. So let me share my screen and start today. So I have a very simple session uh, take on semiotics because, like I said, it is complicated. Therefore, we've just broken down into principles, specific principles. So this is really the basic session. And there's a lot more you need to understand, know, and it comes when you actually apply some of the principles that you hear. So that the only way to learn is to apply it in any little way, just as layman, if we use it when we look at, the signs and symbols around us, that's how we learn semiotics. So it's, in a way, it's simple to learn because you have to practice it, but at the same time, it's complicated. So semiotics is a discipline that studies how meanings are created in human and animal interaction, because we are all communicating to each other with various signs and symbols. And how are those signs and symbols gathering those meanings? Because they don't just happen. It happens over time across, the years as culture changes. So that's how it builds meaning. And basically, it studies how science, code, symbols, stories, language help people interpret and make sense of the world around them. So, semiotics is something that involves linguistics and anthropology to really understand what is happening. And there's a lot of theory built around it through the 80s and 90s, and a lot of European authors have written. Very difficult to comprehend if when you try reading them. We've been trying to read them, but we've taken it, like I said, and used it in research just for that purpose. So that's what we will talk today. So what are signs? Anything is a sign. Look around you and anything is a sign. Even look at yourself. When you look at yourself, you're wearing a certain kind of clothes, you're wearing a certain kind of shoes, you're communicating, something to others. And that's a sign itself. So when you see a red dot, what comes to mind? So when you see Coke, and the most iconic of symbols we all know is the apple, and how well they've used it across the globe and across the years to signify, a product that is desired by everyone. So it was a very deliberate attempt, and how well they've created this symbol of temptation. And then anything, Dow for Peace, Shine, Starbucks, your tattoos, smileys, anything is a symbol. Even your really functional one, like don't smoke. So all of these are various signs that if you look around, you'll see so many signs around you. All you have to do is think on how it actually evolved over time. And that is the study of semiotics in the simplest sense. So signs are everywhere. They are shaped by the sources and resources that are used to make them. Now, these are different ways of understanding what semiotics is. So I'm just giving you a little bit of structure, and you'll see, how to apply it in really when you're doing, because as even as working in Lazada, and the number of icons that you use on the app, they all have a history, and that's what we need to understand. What does it stand for? What do those symbols stand for in different countries across time? So there are sources of meaning, ways of meaning, structures, context, channels. Let me quickly take you through these headings. So sources of meanings, there is the meaning which the nature has given us. So it's the purest, simplest form, which when you look at a rabbit, it's an animal, right? That's all we know about it. That's the purest form of a meaning. But over time, how we've created those meanings around it. So even being the year of rabbit, what what are the associations with rabbit that has evolved in the Chinese culture? And it's very different from an American culture. What does rabbit stand in an American culture or an Indian culture? What does it stand for? So it's so different. But look at the richness that the Chinese culture has provided through a rabbit. It represents the moon, it represents, I'm sure you all know the meanings associated with it. And I mean, it's declared, I mean, our years are associated with rabbit. So the culture creates those meanings, which we need to try and understand how it evolves. That is the study of semiotics. Meanings can be literal. So you read a flow chart and it says from point A to point B to point C. It's a very literal meaning, right? There's no hidden meanings there. It is very direct. So that's literal, that's precise. That's a kind of meaning. Then there is analogical or parallel, where you find synonyms, other words. So that's also a way of creating meaning. And metaphorical. Now, this is the complicated one, which all the brands use, where they use certain metaphors to imply meanings for their brands. And we'll come to this. Apple is the one symbol that is used so well, and it's otherwise used, we use this very often, this term, you're the apple of my eye. So it's a metaphor. It implies, it's symbolic of a certain value. Therefore, it gives certain meanings to what it is associated with. So there are different ways meanings are created. Then there are different structures. So because when we see, especially in brands, we see various meanings with Nike, or your Rolls Royce or Apple, and all the different meanings that, and they've taken it from somewhere. For instance, Nike is actually the swoosh stroke has evolved from the wings of the goddess to symbolize speed. So the advertising, the branding guys have picked up certain symbols which have very deep meanings from mythology and built the cultural meaning around them to create a brand. So they've taken symbols which have originally strong, deep meanings, and that is from mythology. So if you look at certain symbols, even in China, you'll have those which are rooted in your religion, in your culture, in your historical, in your mythology. And those symbols have a far greater, they do very well, because people relate to it at a very subconscious level, because it has that depth of meaning. So that's how brands are created. And love story, we know that any love story, it talks about how uh, we overcome an obstacle. There's always a villain, and you overcome. The villain could be parents, the villain could be the neighborhood, the villain could be anything, it could be a mountain. But the love story is about overcoming obstacles, and through all of this, it reinforces various cultural rules that are embedded in our society. Like they talk about sexual fidelity, how they live happily together at the end. So that's talking about, in a way, it's implying that they've been, loyal to one another and lived forever. And they also talk about stereotypes, how the man woos the woman, the man has the upper hand. So it talks about the masculine role in the equation between man and women. So the gender part, and also even class, because most of our love stories has one from the upper class, one from the lower class. So it's again reinforcing the meaning that there are two different class segments, and they are coming together in spite of the barriers. So these are all the messages that are getting reinforced through a love story. A love story is also a communication. It's also where meanings are created. And context of meaning, now that is really very important, the context, because the context around the object is what gives the meaning. So for instance, earlier when car was um, invented, it was just a means of transport. It was a means of transport to go from point A to point B. And how that simple uh, product became a symbol of status. It became a symbol of royalty, of wealth, of power. So many of those, because if you look at your SUVs, um, they symbolize power in terms of the whole image that they create, in terms of the whole build of the car, the muscle on the body and the ruggedness of the tires. So these are all ways that meanings are created. So when you look at an object, you look at different parts of the object to understand what meaning it creates. And that is what our branding guys are doing to create the meaning. And context, there's a lot more to context in terms of, if you look at the 1800s to 1920, when uh, we were in the stage of manufacturing, production, all our values, our systems were so different as compared to in the 19th century, from 1940 onwards, where it became a more consumption ethos. So if you look at the production ethos and the consumption ethos, how the values have changed, and how therefore the symbols also take different meanings, because the value has changed, the context has changed. So from traditional culture, we became more cosmopolitan. From being very rigid about rules, we became more flexible. We've got more fluid systems. There are lesser rules in various parts, whether it's marriage, whether it's social system, whether it is work ethics. A lot of things have changed. If you go back to, I know a lot of you are young and may not relate to 1940s, but if we go and read up those pre-1940, and the way the societies were formed, it's so different from now. And therefore, what were the symbols which did well there, and what were the symbols now? So it's become a lot more fluid. So this is to give you just a sense of how the context can make a difference to the meanings that are created for the symbols, whatever symbol you take. Today what it stands for and what it was earlier is very different. Then channels of meaning. So it could be matter, it could be physical, which is, it could be visual, optical, acoustic, tactile. meanings are conveyed through all of our senses. It's not just about the visual decoding or the text. It's also about hearing a certain music, like when you hear heavy metal versus a lounge music. Look at the moods it creates, the whole different feeling that happens, right? Even today, when you walked, Harris had this wonderful music happening. I was telling him, it feels like we are in a five-star. As compared to you put on a heavy metal, you would probably get up and shake a bit, or maybe pop music, not so much heavy metal, whatever, it's creating a different mood, it's creating a different meaning. And that's what semiotics is about. And meanings can come in various forms, various channels of meanings. And there is, like we saw, the literal meaning versus the metaphor. Similarly, there is the statistical meaning, there is the emotional meaning. So one death is a tragedy, a million death is a statistic. So that's also creating meanings. Now, we looked at some introduction into what meanings could be, what semiotics could be. Let me just take you through some more principles. Now, when we study semiotics, there are two parts to it. Uh, this is very literal semiotics, as in what the bookish semiotics is about. There is a signifier, what is, and there is a signified, what it means. So you break it down. I found it very hard to understand this concept and had to read up a lot right at the beginning when I started doing semiotics, because we just assumes meanings are meanings, but then you have to break it down into what it means and what the object is about. Okay, let me give you some examples. So, and that forms a signification system. A signifier and a signified is what create a system, signification system. And that's what we are studying about. So when you see a symbol called open, there are lots of cues which tells you that it is open, right? So see, these are things which we never note, right? It's very unconscious. We just imagine no open as open. But just think of it. When it says open, there's a shop where the doors are open. There's a shop where the lights are lit. There's a shop with somebody standing there smiling at you, maybe. There's a shop that has some, digital activation happening. So there are different cues which tell you that it is open. So this is a signified and a signifier. So signified is open, signifier is all the different cues that you have which tells you it's open. Similarly, if you look at gold, gold was just a fine metal for which you paid a lot of money, or it was just a gold yellow metal. Even before we paid money for it, it was just a yellow metal. It was a colored, shiny metal, yellow, non-rusting, malleable, ductile element. That's what gold is in its purest form. So that is what is called a signifier. The actual object and the original meaning, that is a signifier. And what is signified? Signified is all the meanings that the culture builds around this product. So today, if you look at gold, it has various meanings. It comes in the context of economic power, sexual possession, wealth, fidelity, establishment, because a lot of countries, religion, religious houses hoard gold as a way of, maintaining their wealth. So it's associated with establishment. It is luxury. In certain countries, it's more luxury. But the luxury nature of gold has changed with the millennials versus the baby boomers, right? It's very different. For baby boomers, it was luxury, but today's youngsters may not be interested in gold. They may be interested in something else. It's your bitcoins, right? Which is probably luxury or wealth. Um, it symbolizes love, it symbolizes importance. If you walk in with a gold chain, it's important. It's warmth because it's yellow, and the color yellow has codes of warmth. It's even eternity, even vulgarity, because you load yourself with too much gold, it looks gross, it looks crass. So there's so many meanings it takes on. when it's used by different people, but in different situations. So, but what was it originally? It was just a yellow metal. If you look at the Western culture, the apple, we know how well it's been used. So in the Abrahamic culture, the apple was what Eve was tempted with, and it was the symbol of temptation. It started off with that, right? So the signifier was apple, the original element is apple. It was a fruit, healthy fruit. That's all it was. But that, with the early mythological stories, or some of people would call it religious stories, where Eve tempted Adam with the apple, then it became a symbol of temptation. And that is the temptation which um, Apple Inc. used so well over the years. And they've used it, if you see, look at the design that they've used across the years, how well they've used that. And they used this symbol in different years, and each of them was interpreted differently. Now, when it was originally formed, I guess 1976, in 1977, it took on colors. Now, rainbow has another level of meanings. In different communities, it's different meanings. In different, between the American, the Chinese, the Indians, it's all different meanings. The rainbow has different meanings. It typically is positivity and happiness and all of that. But if you look at the LGBT community, for them, it's a different meaning altogether. Similarly, black and the gray and the steel gray and the way the bitten apple, that's a level higher on temptation. So they've used it so well to decode, to symbolize the temptation. Now, when you compare it with competition, look how different it looks. So just think about, when you see the Apple logo, what feelings does it evoke? And when you look at the IBM, what feelings does it evoke? What do the colors signify, and what do the shapes signify? So these are the questions that you ask when you're trying to evaluate a visual semiotically. Let's look at the meanings here. Now, if you look at Apple, when they founded it and they used this logo, it stood for flexible, for friendly, for pleasure, knowledge, hope, West Coast. It was made there. Anarchy, forbidden fruit, Alan Turing. How different IBM stands for, with its lines, the blue color, with the bold letters, and the gap between the lines. All of them, you know, signify establishment. It signifies some level of seriousness. It's the dependability. It was made, I mean, it's the opposite of Apple, therefore, in the West and the East Coast, which is the literal part of it. But it was about substance, but in a way, it was cold. So you see how the difference in the company culture and the company, the meanings that are associated with these companies, it's so different. So, and the people who created, for them, this, the way they created the apple was a great logo, and it was a great mystery. So it signified pleasure, and they took it along and made so many, it symbolized knowledge, it symbolized hope, it symbolized disruption, which paved way for creativity and innovation. So the bitten apple was what symbolized anarchy. So semiotics, when you look at it, for people, it's the way we make sense of the world. We already have a sense of, when we, like if you're a Christian and you already know what apple is, it's a symbol of temptation. Therefore, you understand what the meaning Apple Inc. has given to the fruit apple. Whereas if you are from a different culture, you have a different sense of what apple is. And you learn about the meaning that Apple has built on this symbol. So, the two people are reacting to it very differently. But in a way, they're trying to make sense of the world by understanding what this symbol means. And it's not just about brands. It's about when you go out, you look at a traffic light, you see red, you stop. It's your way of discipline. If you see green, you move. So, you're making sense of the world through all these symbols. So for people, a layman, it's an unconscious technology to make sense of the world. That's what semiotics, and we are all doing it all the time. For semiotician, it's trying to understand the rules and the systems of culture. And believe me, it seems a very difficult subject to understand because a lot of it is assumed. We just assume certain meanings, we just assume certain rules. So for a semiotician to put down the theoretical part, it's rather difficult. But there's a lot of work on this. For a graphic designer who creates signs, it is to understand the effect of that symbol on the viewers. And as a part of marketers, to understand what it impacts on the mind. And that's what we also do as researchers. And for brands, is a way of controlling the equity of the brand, the cultural capital of the brand. So they create a deliberate set of meanings around the brand so that people will relate to those associations or will give those values to that brand. So semiotics is meaning making. It draws on philosophy, linguistics, and anthropology. And we know it has a very strong impact on communication and how people communicate. So by semiotically analyzing the discourses, we can begin to understand the culture that supports it. So in semiotics, we don't interview people. It's not like in Qual, we call a set of people and we talk to them and try to understand what's behind in their minds. We try to understand what's going on in their minds, right? In semiotics, we are trying to understand culture. So we do not talk to people. We look at the visual symbols around them. We look at the text that is around them, the literature, the any kind of written form, any kind of visual form, or any kind of all the different things that create the meaning around it. So in semiotics, we don't interview anyone. We look at what are the symbols. So you walk into a home. Let's say you want to understand the semiotics within a home. You walk into a home, you don't talk to people there. Of course, in Qual, we kind of combine it with qualitative and semiotics to get a complete picture. But let's say you were to walk into a home, you, instead of talking to people, you observe the home. You see what is around, what are the symbols around, how is the house laid out, what are the kind of pictures and the sounds that you see, what is the smell that you get. So those are what you will evaluate. We don't interview people in semiotics. We study the culture, and typically we study the symbols, the visuals and the text to understand how meanings are created. Because culture hides, it hides, um, it is not, even consumers are not able to express it because it hides, it's assumed in a very often. It is a shared value system, because if you look at a lot of our mythology and religion, you look at the symbols that are there. We just grew up with them, right? Whether it's the cross or the Buddha uh, symbols, or the Om symbols, we just grew up with them, and we share it with a lot of people. So it's a shared set of symbols, and it's taken for granted. You don't try to decode what it stands for, but a semiotician will try to decode what it stands for. So when you study semiotics, you're looking at those symbols to understand what kind of a person or what kind of a brand it is. So culture is the collective programming of the mind, which distinguishes the member of one group or category of people from another. So if you look at the simplest contrast is the American versus Chinese culture, how different in terms of the values and the symbols and everything is, right? And how it is so taken for granted. If you're a Chinese, you just assume those symbols are there, you just grew up with them. Similarly, in all other cultures. So there's no right or wrong. It's inherited, and it's about individual behavior and shared value system. So when as a consumer, when you look at brands, brands are uh, you see meanings at different level. So it's the product itself. Let's say a shampoo. It's a product which cleans hair and it's yellow or red or pink or whatever color liquid. And then that's the original form of shampoo. Then you have the brand where certain values are given with the brand name, whether it's a L'Oreal or a Dove or a Tresemme. You have certain values of the brand that are created by the marketing. So you have that lens, the brand values that come through. Then you have the competition. In Tresemme came in much later, and it had a certain set of competition, right? At that time, it was L'Oreal. So what did it do to compete with the other brands, and what values did it show to compete with the other brands? So you see it through that lens. Then you look at entire shampoo category. What are the different codes and what are the different things that work in the shampoo category? Because earlier it was just about cleaning, and then it went on to giving black shiny hair or keeping your curls intact. So there are different category benefits that manufacturers created over time. Then there is a national popular culture. So a L'Oreal ad in India will be different from what it is in China or in the US. Similarly, international popular culture. So as a global phenomena, there's certain uh, characteristics about shampoo that has come up, and that is also playing. So when you look at when a semiotician is studying, they look at all these different lenses. That's how you see how the meanings are created. So product, brand, competition, category discourse, national popular culture, and international. And today with the internet, our world has become more and more, we are sharing a lot more value systems as compared to the Western or compared to any other culture, right? There's a lot more openness. Therefore, you need to study a global culture also to see how it is impacting meaning. So when you study a brand, so you see it within all these different framework. So by the product, by the brand, by the current hair trends, by the global hair trends. So within that category, this is how you study uh, brands and how it evolves, how the brands and meanings are created. So for instance, for us, we're looking at shopping apps. We have to see how shopping apps, of course, it's evolved recently, but the basic shopping app and how it evolved, little more evolved, and who are the competition at that time with, in each country it was different. So how did your brand create symbols or meanings to counter the effect of the competition, which works differently in each culture, right? So, and when you look at, of course, a lot of our semiotic studies, I'm showing you this because we did in these categories, in personal care categories is where a lot of our semiotic studies were conducted, because they were the guys who were spending your Unilever and L'Oreal. And there's so much competition that they want to differentiate the brand. Therefore, more focus on understanding the values and creating a brand that is different. So every time, they created a different packaging, a different color to create a new value or a new meaning for the brand. So, whether it was for keratin or for, having those different little symbols you can see, which is your hair strands to represent the category, to represent the effect of the shampoo on your scalp, to show premiumness, to show vibrancy, passion, power, all of that. So how else do you differentiate a brand, right? You need to create those meanings and create symbols that go along with the brand. And it's such a cluttered category. There are so many hair brands and so many, it's even more cluttered now with the social media brands and all of that. So it's very difficult to create a distinct brand identity. Therefore, you need to symbolize a brand well. And that is what they're trying to do with all these different details that you can see on the packaging. We look at the key principles of semiotics. So what culture does is any sign, you take a tree, you take a plant, you take a dove, you take a bird, they all um, converted or built upon by culture into coded symbols. So there is a signifier, like I said earlier, the apple is the signifier. The signified is all the meanings that every culture has built upon the apple or the element, and then that becomes the coded symbol. So culture turns all signs into coded symbols, and these coded symbols are what we are trying to decode when we use it for our own brands. So we saw this example, bright, shiny, wealth, opulence, right? So I was looking at, so while these are all generic examples, I thought we'd look at some of the symbols that we used on our app and what it implies. So I know it's not easy to, get into the history for each of these symbols, but at least at a very not a superficial, top of the line level, if you understand what it stands for and what other meanings does it have, maybe not just in this generation, but a generation earlier. So that gives you a little more understanding of what the symbols are when you're using that particular symbol for your brand. So these are some of the icons that are used on our app, on the Lazada app. And so these are, if you, I mean, for most of you, will say, yeah, it's quite simple, right? If it's a green vehicle, it means eco-friendly. Pink brush applicator, it's a beauty product. But it's not always so simple. Here, like if you take a Nike symbol, it was built over time to create a certain meaning. I know we don't create that kind of symbols on a shopping app, but you need to see whether the symbols that you use have the meanings that is uh, relevant in your the country that you're using. So it could mean different things in different countries. In different markets, it could mean different. That you need to keep in mind. So the flame, which actually the hot deal is, it's a pretty good symbol which works very well. Most people understand that it means a hot deal. The birthday and the purple color. Purple again has different associations in different countries, but fortunately, I think you're operating in, if, let's say Southeast Asia, it's a little more uniform. But when you move into, let's say, US or Europe, you need to see what the purple color stands for. But uh, across the universe, what we have used, and the way colors are symbolized is purple is for luxury, for perfection. So there is a certain common element which is there. Then the red percentage of, everybody knows it's a discount or coupon, feeding bottle, camera. Now the camera wasn't always clear when we checked with people for on the Lazada app. They didn't see it as an image search. They thought it was a camera, and some of them wondered, why do you have a camera on your app? What does it mean? So it's not clear always to everyone. So how do you make it clear for people, when you use a symbol? So you use symbols which have common or shared meanings, so it's easier to for the customers when they are using the app to decipher and go forward. In terms of the second principle, all coded symbols, we said signifier, signified, it creates a coded symbol. They all need a context to make their meaning clear. By itself, they are not clear. There is a context which happens. Now we saw this red dot. It's a simple red dot, but it can mean so many different things. And we all of us assume these meanings. And for a Singaporean, it's a totally different meaning, right, when they see a red dot. Now it changes meaning because there is a different context to the red dot. There's another layer of red. Now it has a context. It becomes a signified. Look at this. It's another layer of meaning. It's a traffic symbol. It's well etched in your memory that this is a traffic signal. Or it may not be a signal because it has a yellow. It should have been a white. It's totally different here, the red dot. The culture, the context is creating the different meanings. Here it's still another meaning that we get with a red dot. And more, yeah. So lots of different meanings. So unless we understand the context in which the meaning, the symbol is embedded, we don't really know the meaning. We can make a wrong impression. Here is a totally different, the red dot meaning. So if when we look at what constructs the reality for Lazada, it's all those different icons that we've used. So for us as people who use these icons or who create these icons, you need to make sure that it is clear for all consumers. It's clear across people in different cultures because you are going to 6, 7 markets. And of course, it's a different challenge when you move into another uh, Western market or any other market. And how does all of this create the reality for Lazada? What does it say at, at a overall level? What does it say about Lazada? Does it say it's a place for value for money shopping? Does it say it's a place for authentic shopping? Because that's the value we've seen over and over in all our studies. We've seen Lazada as an authentic place for shopping where there are trusted sellers, verified sellers. So does all of these symbols, when you're creating these different symbols, does it create a value for Lazada that it is authentic, that it has verified sellers, that it's a good place for discounts? Shopee is a good place for discount because there's so many different forms of making money. What is the reality that you're constructing? That's what you need to ask when you have these different symbols, and you need to align it with those few values that Lazada represents, and which is why I'm showing you a little later on the brand value. I'll just come to that, but keep this in mind, how you use different symbols to create the value, overall value for Lazada, not just the individual symbols, the overall value. The third principle comes from knowing what things mean. And this is an important principle of semiotics. It's not just understanding what the meaning is, but also understanding what it is not, the principle of notness. So that is a very important principle in semiotics. So is this a child intelligent? When you see this image, you will say, well, is this a child intelligent? So obviously you're seeing a child who's writing, he's young, he looks a bit nerdy, he's got something else behind him, which seems like a bag with full of books. So you would say, hi, he is intelligent, right? Now, what would you say? Would you say this child is intelligent? Yes, it kind of confirms that the child is intelligent. You can answer these yourself. Now, what would you say? Is this child intelligent? So now, we have to decide, is less intelligent or more intelligent, right? So the meaning kind of changes because the context has changed. So that's the third principle. So the third principle is the child intelligent? What is the child not? He's not a monkey, definitely, but he is not as intelligent as Albert Einstein. So the principle of notness is breakfast is not supper, it's not lunch, it's not dinner. It's the first thing what you eat in the morning. Clean is not dirty. That's why Unilever had that whole thing about, first they went attacking dirt, saying it cleans dirt, it cleans dirt. And then they picked up dirt and then they said dirt is good, right? They created a whole romantic idea of dirt because clean is not dirty, but they tried to connect these two. Mummy is not daddy, no is not yes, black is not white. So when you look at a symbol, what we are saying is look at what it is not. A specific symbol. What is Lazada in its with its symbol? What it is not? It's not. Uh, I would say it's not boring because it's got a very passionate, that pinkish purple color, because that's associated with passion. It is not. I mean, you can also think through these. What Lazada is not. So that's an important part of understanding what the meaning of a symbol is. So if you look at natural, there are so many different meanings for natural. All of this, being happy, or the simple fruit, the earth, all of that is natural. What is not natural is what is not honest, what is not hidden, what is lost its innocence, going against beliefs. So there are so many different ways not natural can be. So you need to understand any symbol in what is and what it is not. So that was the third principle of semiotics. And the fourth principle is that the culture is always changing. It's dynamic, it changes. And we've seen the kind of change in the last 10 years with the shopping apps and how people have changed over time, and how many more symbols are we using on an app as compared to earlier, right? Earlier, app was very clean, but now we have so many different symbols. And therefore, you need to see how your symbol stands in relation to other symbols. So the culture is constantly changing and the meanings will change. So you need to understand how the meaning is changing for you to use the signs and symbols. So the way we look at to understand or to study how symbols are changing, we have a couple of framework. So we identify through time, which is the standard. You see a symbol, how it was in the 1980s, 90s, 2000, early 2000, then 2010 to 20. How did it change over 10 different years? Or you create the period, and you try and understand how a symbol has changed in meaning over time. So this is how fashion has changed over time. So residual as of yesterday, dominant, which is what is now, and emergent, which is tomorrow. So very often in understanding trends, we use this format to see how trends evolve, what happened earlier, and they're all connected because there are something of residual which comes up today and today's which goes up to tomorrow, or it could be a complete different one. So so this is the framework which we use to understand the meanings across time. So this was on hair care, how the hair care codes have changed. Earlier, it was traditional, black, shiny hair. It was building my self-esteem. Then it became about luxury, the greater focus towards, being natural. And then emergent was this whole thing about, preserving your hair. And given all the pollution, we had to talk about how it preserves your hair in its best form, and lot more drama which happened. Similarly, this is for another dominant brand, which was called Fair and Lovely, which was used, which did a lot. They did a lot of semiotic studies on this, a brand, Unilever brand. And when they first launched the brand, it was about a dark girl growing fair, and then this whole culture awareness about being discrimination about black, about your color of the skin. Therefore they had to tone down and say, oh, it doesn't make you fair, it makes you natural. So you to change your language to adapt with what was happening in the cultural context. You can no longer say a dark girl is not beautiful. They couldn't say that. Now you have all the dark girls on ramps in many of the countries, besides the African part of it. But even, let's say in India, we earlier had only fair girls, and now you have so many darker girls on the ramp or as models. So when things change around you, then you have to change the codes for your brand. That's what this was a very extensively studied brand. It was called Fair and Lovely. Another framework is instead of residual, dominant, and emergent, we look at affirmative, adaptive, and transgressive. Affirmative is something which reinforces your beliefs. You know, you have signs and symbol which reinforces a certain belief, which you look at all your religious signs. It reinforces your belief. Adaptive is changing beliefs but adhering to values. So some of our religious symbols have also changed their signs because the values have not totally changed, but they're adapting it to people's change and stand. Right? So there are, like I've seen crosses earlier, Christian crosses. If you look at the Catholic era, it had cross with Christ's body on the cross. But now, if you go to Europe, you'll see a lot of colorful crosses and very attractive, just as attractive as any flower vase. You know, it's beautiful. It's got different designs, crosses with various, far more positive crosses. So it's not so rigid. It's not that original Catholic cross that is there. It's far more modern, more colorful, more happy, doesn't talk to you about suffering always. So, the cross symbol is there, but they've only changed the design on the cross. So it's changing, but adhering to values at the same time. And then transgressive is it could change even more, right? In the future, or because of a certain stand, it could change even more. I don't know if the shape of the cross can change, but we never know. That can also happen, right? So you look at these are different frameworks that you create to understand the changes in meaning. So just recapping what we learned so far. So signified is culturally made. So there is a signifier and a signified. The signified is what the culture bestows meaning on the symbol. And a sign or symbol is a combination of the signifier and the signified. So this is the basic principle in semiotics. So once, if you want to learn more, you start reading on what is a signified, what are the different types of signified, what does the implications, the signified means, all of that. You can go on that. And a signifier can illustrate different codes. So a gold can mean quality, but it also can mean cheap, depending on the consumer and the context. Codes all also play to cultural norms, which we saw that, and they also change over time. It's never the same. It keeps changing. A lot of our symbols do change. So just to make it more relevant to marketing, this is one of the framework that we have used in most of our studies. If you've seen our presentations on all the category understanding, we've used this framework. And if you look at this framework, all the colors that are there, they are, they symbolize motivations. There are 6 motivation in the universe, and these 6 motivation are coded with colors, and these colors and their meanings are been valid for over the years. So like I said, purple is perfection, green is recognition and jealousy, red is vitality, orange is affiliation, blue is security. If you look at all your airlines, a lot of them are blue. Singapore Airlines, KLM, they're all blue. There's so many other airlines which are all using blue because they want to reinforce comfort, trust, security. They don't want to talk about vitality. Of course, Virgin Atlantic does talk about vitality with their red, but that's a different branding that they have. But a lot of them are in the blue sphere. So, these are the colors that they've used, and this is a framework we've used. So even when you look at our reports, you'll see how personalities match with these codes. So, which is why I brought it here, because it's also about the meanings that each color gives. And just going back to an old example, which is Nokia, it was a physical object and how the phone has evolved. And now if you look at, this was a study which was done in, uh, long back by one of the famous um, advertising gurus. So that's why I have it here. So now, when they had Nokia advertisement and Ericsson on the right, so Nokia was a very functional phone, and of course, it was leading the market. At that time, they wanted to show Ericsson in a different context. So if you see the context, it has cherry tomatoes, brown bread, wooden table, the cutting board. So they were trying to give a different, creating a reality which is different as compared to Nokia. And that's how you create realities. You bring in symbols that create a certain reality that people are already aware of. So a cherry tomato has to be fresh. It is from the earth. Brown bread, most of the values, it's about, being natural, raw, all of that. So they're trying to portray a certain reality around Ericsson. That's how they created it. Of course, this ad must have been in the 1990s or so. We've seen the symbol of the hand, right? We've seen it in a lot of our museums, and the touch of life, which Nokia used very well to show that it's connecting people. Diet Coke. So these are some of the brands we researched. That's why I have it here. And so if you look at the Diet Coke and how they, what each of those symbols stand for, because whatever they put there on their can and on their advertisements are all deliberate. So each has a meaning, a very well thought out meaning, um, which is well researched. So here we have a metaphor with the lip, with the attraction, the Diet Coke, because it's about being sexy and attractive, slim. And, they have these group of people to show that it's popular, that everybody is drinking it. Then all those twirls and curls to give a little mystery to the brand. The Diet Coke itself, the Coke, of course, is the branding color, vitality, whereas the diet is the opposite of that, the word diet. Then here, even the images in, the embedded images kind of thing, it implies social binding, because the Coke is all about drinking with others and having fun with others. So all of those values are, you know, hinted at in all their communication. And that's what I was telling you about when we construct the reality for Lazada on the app. You choose symbols that all represent a certain value for the brand. So the values need to be reinforced. You can't have many values. You choose your values, say two or three, and then have icons that reinforce those specific values. Let your hair down, fun, sociability. So there is a certain language, similar cohesiveness about the language in this ad, right, in the brand. So that is, and it is very deliberate, and it's done across different communication, because you do it for this. I'm sure they had hundreds, thousands of communication that they created, and they have to make sure that it's repeated across all of that. Then to create the fizz metaphor, they have wavy hair for that, champagne, celebrate, the pop up, all of that. So just to show you how each image or each symbol is used to represent a certain meaning. And all of it put together creates a reality for Coke, which is again has very focused meanings. It cannot be all over the place. It has to be focused on celebration, on fun, on sociability, so freedom, which is what Coke was about. And that's how, every new icon or symbol that they use to research it, think through it, and then have the even the calligraphy or the shape of the bottle, of course, all of that meant something. So I just wanted you to think about what Lazada symbol stands for. What are the meaning associated with the colors? What does the shape signify? So what does the thickness and density of the symbol matter? I mean, to what extent does it matter? Why does it matter? What does the edges on the shape signify? Of course, you can take more elements and have questions around it, but these are things you need to think about. Where is Lazada going with this symbol? What does this symbol not represent? The notness of it. And what are the sign symbols that are similar to these? So we don't operate in isolation. There are other brands, other symbols that are out there, which are similar to Lazada. I mean, it's a heart symbol. So you need to also see the competition, or let's say there's another shopping app that comes up with somewhat similar of a heart uh, symbol. Then what do? Do you need to change drastically? Do you change a little? Do you tweak? What do you tweak? So these are things, and it happens depending on your context. It changes basis what's happening around you. So there is the quality, there is your I love in New York, or I love many countries have started that. Color codes are vibrant, fun, special. Shape is heart, desires of the heart. Thickness means dependability and assurance. Edges on the shape is precision, indicating quality, because there's a certain precision about those lines that are there. And notness is, it's not simple, it's not frivolous, and that we've seen in the all the research, that it is not simple. It's got a lot more layers than, let's say, a Shopee. It's far more it has more depth, but also more complicated. So there is a negative to that also. So how to start using semiotic principles? So like I said, the principles that we already saw, but uh, what I wanted to tell you here is that through the different studies, we've been arriving at a customer value proposition for Lazada. And in most studies, you'll see three of these, which is reliable, authentic, and trendy. Now, what we need to keep in mind is when we choose icons for, let's say, discounts, or for certain offers, or for certain products, we also need to be sure that we are implying that authenticity, or we are implying reliability, or we are implying trust, or we are implying the trendy part. I mean, not all of them, but at least, one of them. So when we look at when we construct, let's say you pull out all the icons for Lazada, put it all together just by itself, and see what does it overall tell you. Does it say Lazada is an authentic brand? Does it say that Lazada is a reliable brand? What is the whole tone that is happening there? So that's what you need to uh, imply to people. And you need to be aware what symbols to use, what signs to use that give those meanings. So when you choose signs and symbols for the app, you look at what does the color mean, where it is used predominantly, not what it means, where else is it used. Is it used in other shopping apps? It's used in Shopee, in Tokopedia, which is your biggest competitor in Indonesia. So you look at across different countries, how is it, what does the color mean in the different countries? What does the shape mean? What does the font mean? So, and there are a lot more elements that you have to look at. I've just listed three here, but even the depth, the the intensity, the edges, the precision of the edges, so all of these, you try and understand and see what does it convey to people, and what is the meaning that it is creating. Just give me 1 second. So so you also need to align the codes with the shopping trends. So here we have, like we saw the framework. So what was the shopping trend earlier? What is it current? And how is shopping going to go in the future? We don't know. right? Obviously, it's going more online and more people are shopping on the app. But what kind of app? So, how is it going to evolve? And how is your the sign and symbol going to evolve along with the changes in the category, in the shopping habits of people? So that's something which you need to keep in mind when you choose your signs and symbols. Yeah. So these are just some thoughts on how you can use semiotics while you're choosing your symbols and signs for Lazada. There's a lot more to semiotics. Even in spite of doing this for years, we are nowhere experts, I would say. We are still more qual researchers, but we use semiotics in a limited way. So that's my sharing today for semiotics. I hope you learned something. I hope things were clear to some extent. If you want to learn more, yes, read up. Uh, there are a lot of books out there. And I think there's one by Rachel Laws who's made it more relevant for marketing. So you can look at her books and yeah, it comes with practice. So you have to read and do and read and do. It's that kind of a discipline. You don't just learn this discipline. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Jaisy. A very interesting and engaging topics. How semiotics really closely related to culture. If there's any question for Jaisy, anyone? If not, then Jaisy, you
Yeah.
have anything to add? Or
No, that's it. Like I said, it's a difficult discipline. So
Mhm.
read up. There are a lot of simple books and difficult books. So you can read up, and there's a lot on the net itself. So
Yeah, again, thank you, Jaisy, and for the this wait for our other sharing on other topics. Thank you very much, Jaisy,
yeah,
and thank you all for attending. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
bye. Thank you.